Masters of the Universe has spent 15 years almost, over 15 years at this point, in development hell, and the final product is finally here. Was it worth the wait? We're going to talk about that this week on Beware of Spoilers. Good evening and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. We are here today to talk about Masters of the Universe, the new movie that's finally out. We've been waiting for this. I mean, let me put it this way. We, the royal we, meaning I'm sure there are some people out there who have been waiting for this movie since it was announced to be in production back in 2009. I actually looked it up because I was like, I've been hearing about this live-action Masters of the Universe movie for a very long time. I was like, when was this announced? And the answer was 2009, and then it went through this very long production, lots of directors, lots of actors, lots of, Noah Centineo was originally cast to play, Adam, and it just didn't, he dropped out, and then we ended up with Nicholas Galitzine, however you pronounce his name. It's an interesting situation that this movie took this long to get made. And I think, by and large, the end result feels like a product of its time if the movie came out 10 years ago almost. I mean, as I'm watching it, the thing that really struck me about this, and this is a little baffling, is how much the movie reminds me of Thor Ragnarok. Because look, it borrows heavily from Thor. I'm not gonna beat around the bush on that. You have the kid who gets cast out of his realm, ends up living among the humans, and then has to live around the humans for a while, and then he ends up going, back to Eternia to save it. And it's like, okay, it's a cliched story, and it's something that we've seen before, obviously, because it's just Thor. But by the time we get to the third act, there's so much of it that kind of just, I would say nicely, borrows heavily from Thor Ragnarok to the point that, there are shots that I'm like, I saw this in Thor Ragnarok, this exact thing. And by the way, let's just address the elephant in the room on this, because I feel like there's something that kind of needs to be addressed. People gave Kevin Smith shit for, what was that movie? For Revelations. Masters of the Universe Revelation on Netflix. And I feel like that was some people who were pissed off about the fact that the first 6 episodes, I think it was, don't have He-Man in it a whole bunch because he gets killed and then they have to resurrect him. And okay, Chud's gonna chud, but at the same time, one of the things they were complaining about was there's a joke about Fisto, and it's he's talking about Skeletor, and he's like, oh, Skeletor, man, I'd love to fist him. And it's okay, you knew that was coming because, Kevin Smith's involved, and that's the kind of humor you're gonna get from this. There are way more Fisto jokes in this movie. Who would have thought that, Kevin Smith would be the restrained one here? And I'm not someone who's we need to treat this source material with reverence and blah, 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 blah. And it's because there are people like that. A lot of Gen X, and we'll get to that probably after the break, but I don't believe that there's any media that needs to be treated as reverent in that way, where it's you can't joke around, you can't do anything like that. You're free to do what you want with it. But the issue with this is that it's I just kind of feel like it's a little all over the place in terms of tone. The jokes are too modern for the rest of the world. It feels a little out of place. And then the other thing is this movie is very specifically catered to Gen X in a way that I don't think I've really seen a movie catered to its specific audience to this degree before. And what I mean by that is you're going to have movies that are going to inherently skew towards who they think are going to go see it. That's how, movie making works when you're dealing with these massive budget movies that are being made by, in this case, Amazon. And in case you didn't see the Amazon logo before it, don't worry, Adam and Teela get saved because the fucking creature thing from Eternia that's chasing them through Earth gets fucking creamed by an Amazon Prime delivery truck. So, you know, don't worry about that because Amazon needs their product placement. And it's like that was like one of the two egregious product placements. The other is like they give him a bottle of Coke to pour his own glass to drink at the table, and I'm like, where is he going to eat? That's giving him a glass bottle of Coke to pour into a cup by himself at the table. Like, come on. And I think that, like, one of the things that I wanted to talk about with this is that it's like, you know, the movie's point is that, you know, he is fit to be the vessel of the power of Eternia, the power of Grayskull, because he's not someone. It's basically the Captain America thing, where it's like this power given to a man who's already powerful will corrupt him because he will know what it's like to be powerful. Someone who isn't powerful will take this power and do good with it, which, again, it was a stretch in logic in Captain America. It's a stretch in logic here because it's like there are plenty of people out there who get, you know, who were wronged and then wrong the next person. I mean, psychologically, hurt people, and that's, you know, that's kind of it. Where it's like this guy was bullied all his life. Let's give him a, you know, let's see what we're gonna do. Like, you know, let's give him a gun, see what happens. And it's like that's kind of what the big issue that I have with this movie is that it's like, okay, that's the moral, but at the end of the day, like, it still ends with him beating the ever-living fuck out of Skeletor. And by and large, what this movie feels like, I think the best way to describe it, and I had this thought during a fight right before the third act, where it's him in Snake Castle, and, you know, Skeletor is holding his father hostage, and he has to fight all these guys. And it felt like, it's like if you give a kid a bunch of toys and just say, go fucking nuts, buddy, we're gonna record it and put it on YouTube. And that's what that fight kind of felt like. Where it's like, okay, cool. And then, like, in the fight itself at the end, it's like, I get that He-Man's the main character. I completely understand that that's what this movie is. But to get to the third act of this movie and to have, you know, Evil Lyn fighting Teela, and that just kind of end, and Cringer fighting the giant beast thing from earlier in the movie, and that just kind of end, and neither one of them really feels resolved, is kind of a really strange choice. And not only that, but, like, we cut away from this fight for a sizable amount of time to watch Man-at-Arms and the Robot Lady, you know, have that moment there, and it's like the Robot Lady gets blown up, and it's like, but of course, I've seen all the Marvel movies that this movie is ripping from, so I know that this is, like, she's gonna sacrifice herself, and she's gonna end up being, you know, used, you know, she's gonna come back as a new form, and, you know, in the next scene, and it's like, oh, look, surprise, it happened, cool, who would have thought? And that's kind of my entire problem with this movie, is that it's like, you know, it seems like it's trying to play a message, but it keeps undercutting its own message because of the audience it's aiming for. And we're going to talk about that right after this.
If you want all things Star Wars every week, follow Exploring Hyperspace Lanes on Spotify, and check us out at mwpnews.com.
So herein lies kind of my big problem with this movie. And look, I have, again, no problem with a movie catering to an audience that's not me. I've seen plenty of movies that cater to an audience that's not me. And, you know, and you know, I've liked some, I've disliked some, and it's like, look, you can do that if you want. But when you have a big franchise like this, like Masters of the Universe, say what you will about it, like it, don't like it, whatever. Masters of the Universe is a massive franchise, and it is something that has the potential, because it was in the past, to be a major IP that sells toys, that sells movies, that sells video games, that sells books, that sells comics. Like, the potential is there. because that's what it was, and it was that in the 80s, and it was that in the 90s a little bit, and there was that brief period in the mid-2000s. Now, granted, I was just the right age where I kind of missed the Masters of the Universe hype, which is why I don't have any strong attachment to the franchise. And it's one of those things that, like, I watched Masters of the Universe Revelation, which, again, going back to that one, and it's just beautifully animated, and this world is so rich and cool, and it's like, oh, shit, I see why people got into this. When I watched this movie, I was kind of like, I'm not sure who this is for. I'm not sure what the point in this movie is, or who this movie was designed to appeal to. Because here's the thing. Very clearly, the message they're trying to send is that, you know, hey, you don't need to beat the fuck out of people to, you know, to solve your problems. You can talk it out. You can do that. And it is interesting that, like, he says to Skeletor toward the end of the movie, like, oh, well, you know, hey, we could talk out, you know, we could talk this out. And Skeletor's like, no, we can't talk this out. Like, I'm evil. I'm the bad guy. You have to beat me. Like, there is no talking this out. There is no negotiating with me. And that, it's an interesting thing. And it's like, and then he beats the fuck out of him. But the entire way through the movie, they kind of, like, throw that out as an option, where it's like, he constantly tries to do it. He's an HR person, in on Earth. Like, that's his job, is he's an HR manager, and he's like, oh, well, I will try to talk this out. I will, you know, and he goes and tries to talk it out with, I think, with Lockjaw is the name of the guy. And it's like, okay, I'm going to go try and talk it out with this guy. We're going to see what happens. And then he has to use the power to defeat Lockjaw. And it's like, okay, so you keep trying to make that point, and it's like, it has the potential to be an interesting comedic beat, because you're going to keep coming back to this thing where it's like, I'm going to try to do it, it doesn't work, and I'm going to beat the fuck out of him. And it's like, okay, so we're just going to keep doing that because that's how it works in this world. And again, the other issue with this is that Adam has full memory of his time living in Eternia. Like, it's not like he went there and, like, he was a kid, which would have arguably been more interesting with how this character is defined. Like, because he's someone who has these memories of it and no one believes that he actually lived there, it would have been really interesting if they played with that a little bit. If we didn't have the opening of the movie be a flashback to him, you know, escaping and being sent off. And it's just like, yeah, I have these vague recollections of this time living, you know, in this fantasy world with a green tiger as a pet. And it's like, if they were like, oh, no, but, like, your parents died, and this is your trauma doing that, and then it's like, oh, look, I was right, this is real. That would have been more interesting, but that's not what they do. And that's kind of where this whole movie occupies that space, where it's like, it feels like the lesson that we probably should have learned from the sequel trilogy of Star Wars and from Ghostbusters and, you know, all these things, is that attempting to appeal to Gen X is a misguided thing. Attempting to appeal to them and make a movie that they're going to want to go out and see is a mistake. Because I concretely believe that with the rightward shift we've seen politically of Gen X, they would rather have the movie come out, not see it, and then just go online and bitch about it. And that's firmly what I believe is what they would prefer, rather than, you know, watching the movie, engaging with the movie, and enjoying the movie, or not enjoying the movie. And that's kind of the issue here, where it's like, this idea that, like, you know, you have Man-at-Arms and he's giving this whole speech that's basically just missing, like, we don't give out participation trophies here. We do this the way we did when we were kids. And it's like, okay, like, cool, like, you know, moving on. And then ultimately, like, again, He-Man becomes a fighter because he gets a participation trophy. Like, that's the thing, is that it's like, he's not, you know, he gets the power because he proves that, like, you don't have to be the strongest guy to do what you need to do. Like, and that's kind of the big issue that I have here, is that it's like, if the moral of the story is you gotta talk it out, and you can't just, you know, you can't just fight, then you can't, A, undercut that every chance you get, and B, you gotta commit to that. Like, Because here's the thing, is that fundamentally, Adam, at the beginning of this journey that he goes on, and at the end of the journey, is the same person he is. The only difference is he was right about being from Eternia, which we knew that from the beginning. He doesn't learn how to fight better. He doesn't learn how to, to do anything like that. He's basically a Mary Sue. He gets this power, fucks up everyone who comes in his path, and then just kind of moves on. And it's like, I get what this is. It's the ultimate, like a power fantasy, where it's like he's strong and he beats the fuck out of people, and everyone jokes about how big his dick is. And it's like, okay, like, and there are people who will enjoy that, but it doesn't make a good movie, which is why I think this is a solid 2-star movie. Like, it's entertaining enough, and I think if the CGI was just a little bit better, we probably would have bumped it up to a 3. But that's the issue, is that it's like, there are times where the CGI is so spotty that it just kind of feels weird. And it's like, the moments don't feel earned, because, again, we know from the beginning that he has this, that he's from Eternia and all of that. And it's like, nothing ever feels earned for this character. And in a world where it's like, no, if you want to be something, you have to be born into it, you have to be selected. And it's like, no, I think that we probably should have had... There is a good movie you can make with this, but it's just not there. And I think the only reason I give it 2 and not 1 is the scene with Dolph Lundgren. And it's like, it's an endearing scene. It's a very short sequence where he meets him in the gym, and he's like, do you have any advice for someone starting out? And then they do a callback to the advice that he gives them later on in the movie, and it's like, that works. But it's like, I think that it's too disjointed narratively to work as cohesively as a movie needs to, which is unfortunate, because I like, that's the thing, is that it's like, had I not seen Revelations, I probably would have gone into this with lower expectations. Not that I inherently had high expectations for a movie that spent 15 years in development hell, but like, I had a reasonable expectation that you can do something with He-Man and this pantheon of characters that would make me care about them beyond the superficial of it being like, oh, look, this is a big famous IP that you know. And it'll be good for searching, and it's something that people will listen to. And I think that what came from Revelation is like, oh, you can elevate this material, and you can take it and you can do something cool with it that's more modern and more adult. This feels like, again, like I said, action figures being slammed against each other by 2 7-year-olds. And it's like, okay, cool, but you gotta give me some substance. Like, we can't sit here and be like, well, the Super Mario movie doesn't have any substance, and that's a problem, and we gotta, we have to, that has to be improved if we're gonna do that. We gotta expect some story, and then go and like jerk ourselves off to like, oh my God, He-Man's on TV, and it's like, no, it's not as good. If you want to see this movie, go and watch Thor Ragnarok on Disney Plus, because you'll see basically the same movie. They're not divorced enough. And I think the thing that works about Ragnarok that doesn't work about this is fundamentally the fact that, I think Taika Waititi, for his faults, and he has faults, and for the faults that happened in Love and Thunder, Taika Waititi has better comedic sensibilities than, who was it, Travis Knight who directed this? What did Travis Knight direct before this? That name sounds familiar. I think we covered something by him previously. What was it? I don't remember, but he definitely has, like, I think the jokes don't land here as well, because it's like everyone feels kind of the same. Like, all the jokes, it's kind of the Brian Michael Bendis problem, where it's like, you can take any line from any character. Like, this is basically a good rule of thumb if you're someone who wants to get into writing or anything like that. If you are writing multiple characters in a scene, you should be able to take a line from any character with no context as to who it is or what they're saying or anything like that, and you should be able to pick out what character said it, because that tells you who it is. And it's like, without being like, oh, this guy's drunk, oh, this is a woman, oh, she's talking in a weird falsetto, and it's like, okay, well, who is this? You should be able to tell. And I think that fundamentally every joke is cut from the same cloth, which is kind of the Brian Michael Bendis problem, but really it's the Joss Whedon Avengers problem, because that problem was prevalent there too. This idea that like all these characters are joking in the exact same way, and that does not feel organic to these characters. And that's the thing, is that it's like you can have, you know, Adam come in and make the jokes that feel more modern. And you can do the fish out of water with that because he spent 15 years on Earth. But it doesn't quite work as well when, you know, he comes in and Teela's making the same jokes and the robot lady's making the same jokes and Duncan's making the same jokes. It doesn't feel organic. And that's a problem. But we will wrap up there for today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about Power Ballad, the new movie in theaters from John Carney, a director whose DNA is baked into this show. But until then, have a great rest of your week.
Before you go, I also write fiction. My newest novel, Succession Planning, is out on August 28th, available both in paperback and an ebook. It follows a journalism grad stuck managing a store while the owners wage a quiet war over who takes over the business. It's about ambition, inertia, and taking the easiest choice. The link is in the description. That's Succession Planning, out on August 28th.